you want me to say a few words just briefly about the video, just the intro?
If you prefer to say them before, sure, go ahead.
Just to give a context, it's very sharp because I've been drawn in at the last minute here. I made this video for an exhibition in Timber Bar last year, and it's called Stigma Damages, which relates to the body of work I've been working on surrounding the aluminium industry. But of course, my focus is often on Aughinish, having grown up here and being a part of seeing how it has affected our community, our landscape, and our human and animal health in the region. So this was a video that's specifically about greenwashing, which is what industry and companies will do to give themselves this wonderful veneer of being responsible for their communities and pretending, or at least pretending to feel like they're responsible for the environment as well. So it's about how they put this front, if you like, and how their spin is. So this video involves some of the old campaigns that they would have run themselves with videos, and how they present themselves as a company versus then how I, as a local person, as somebody who's grown up on the verges of this monster, interpret that. So it's a female voice actor that's reading the part, and it comes in at about roughly 10, 11 minutes. So I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to let it off, just to know that the first maybe 30 seconds is dark anyway, and it's silent for a bit before the voice comes in, and then just play it away there, whoever's sharing the screen at this point, or roll it there, Roisin, as they say.
In the early 1970s, no one looking at Aughinish would have believed that this sleepy, beautiful island of gorse and heather would be developed into the site of a giant alumina refinery and continue to sustain its local flora and fauna. This island on the Shannon Estuary has, over the years, brought some of the biggest names in the metal world to West Limerick. Starting with a triumvirate of owners that originally built Aughinish, Alcan, Arco and Billiton, evolving to Glencore, our owners at the turn of the millennium, and culminating with our present-day owners, United Company Rusal. In 1978, with the gorse cleared from the land, the stony ground was prepared for construction. Workers were drawn to Aughinish from all over the country and across the world to a vast-scale project.
Aughinish Alumina is Ireland's largest industrial complex and Europe's biggest bauxite refinery. Red rock bauxite is mined and imported to the Shannon Estuary from Guinea in Africa, then crushed and dissolved into caustic soda solution, placed in high-pressure containers, filtered, drained, mixed with hydroxide crystals, heated at 1100 degrees Celsius to dry it into white powder alumina, then exported to smelters throughout the world to be transformed into aluminium. In the 1990s, the refinery hit the headlines with hundreds of cows and horses dying on farms located in its shadow. A 4-year investigation by the Irish State's Environmental Protection Agency found no relationship between the deformed agricultural livestock, local health, toxic deposits, and the caustic emissions billowing out of the large smokestacks nearby. Instead of attributing blame to an industry that's a major economic force and a large employer in the region, the report chastised the ignorance of local farmers, claiming that they must be giving cheap, inadequate feed to their herds, resulting in infection, disease, and death. Independently funded research found otherwise, and inevitably attributed causality to the refinery's activities. The debate rages on today, with farmers and activists calling for widespread recognition and action against ongoing pollution. The refinery's management has pursued an ongoing policy of corporate greenwashing, conveying false impressions and misleading information that their products and activities are, if you were to believe them, environmentally sound. What is the pretense of this language? Where and how is it encountered? Children. The perfect smokescreen. Here are some in an advertisement issued in 1989 by the Public Relations Department of the refinery, made for circulation in local newspapers. 𝐼𝐽𝐻, 9 letters long, an anglicisation of the Irish name for the island, 𝐏𝐻𝐿, meaning Island of Horses. At their age, they can't spell 𝐼𝐽𝐻, but it could help spell their future. Is it preposterous to presume that children would not be able to spell the name of where they are from without industrial assistance? These children and their new neighbour are, according to the advertisement, now inseparable. What then should children think of an ever-expanding storage area for red bauxite residue mud, a byproduct of the manufacturing process on site that continues to exponentially grow to over 350 acres, with recent rock blasting extending its size in close proximity to the river estuary? The mud, full of chemicals, was classified as hazardous and toxic at the start of the refinery's activity in 1983. However, the Environmental Protection Agency instead decided to define the 50 million tonnes of the substance present as non-hazardous since 2003. Water sprinklers try to keep the surface moist, yet on dry, windy days, dust is known to rise from the surface and sweep into the air, to gather softly on car windscreens and gable ends of houses in the area. It falls in gardens and hedgerows, rivers and lakes. The refinery rarely takes responsibility for this, but rather point to freak weather conditions in the Sahara Desert. Their public relations officer revealed that storms in North Africa lift reddish sand particles up 10,000 feet into the air. Winds then blow resulting large dust storms all the way over Europe to Ireland, where contact with moist Atlantic air forces the sand downwards into the vicinity of the Shannon estuary. While inhalation of processed bauxite dust is primarily considered an irritant according to medical professionals, prolonged exposure leads to respiratory ailments and a variety of restrictive pulmonary diseases. Signage to a butterfly sanctuary leads to an open field on the edge of the bauxite waste. No butterflies were seen or recorded during the making of this video footage. A large sign assembles together species of birds native to the estuary and island. They are now put to work, like actors on a stage, exploited to theatrically present a proposition about harmony between nature and industry. Flattened into an illustrative graphic, few of them were actually seen or recorded flying in the vicinity during the making of this video footage. It is difficult to earnestly acknowledge more signage issued by the refinery pleading for visitors to its nature trail not to leave litter behind them. The presence of dragonflies are considered a bio-indicator of clean and fresh water, and their large fairy-like wings of shimmering copper, emerald, amethyst and sapphire colours enhance and beautify the environment they live in. Global warming has resulted in more species, such as the emperor dragonfly, moving north to Irish shores, radiating more iridescent sparkle and dazzling displays of aerial acrobatics. Despite ideal survey conditions of a dry, mild autumn day with little wind, no dragonflies were seen or recorded in the making of this video footage. In an effort to create a more seemingly picturesque view, rows of topiary have been planted in front of filtration tanks at the south side of the facility. The presence of a picnic bench to the east is another attempt at blending the refinery in, somehow. Westerly winds frequently blow a caustic stench over here, likely the result of the high heat calcination process going on nearby. Breathing in particles in the air here leaves a metallic taste and smell in your mouth and nostrils. A scene from one of the many promotional videos shows a fishing competition on the jetty in the 1980s, organised to point out the level of marine diversity still present after the refinery's construction. It is unknown how long the camera crew had to stand with the fisherman before his catch, or perhaps the scene was set up beforehand. In any case, the operational licence issued by the Environmental Protection Agency to the refinery requires no survey or regular monitoring of marine wildlife in the vicinity of the complex. At 𝐵 Creek, old shells are all that's left to be seen of a bed of mussels that once grew here. At a healthy shoreline, the coiled castings of lugworms should be seen in the mud at low tide. None were seen or recorded in the making of this video footage. There are no curlews at low tide looking for worms. They were there once. You can see that life, now disappeared, in video footage made 15 years ago in the same place. A poem, Lament for Aughinish, was written by local Michael D. Ryan in 1972, as the land was bought and plans made for the refinery's construction. I weep for you, Aughinish Island, where poets dreamed and strange philosophies did learned men unfold. Alas, alas, they have taken you into the marketplace and bartered you, my love, for flimsy paper gold. Now men will sweat and swear from Reens to 𝐾𝐮𝐿. Bulldozers tear the heart from lovely 𝐾𝐮𝐿 red mud, the flats of 𝐾𝐵𝐿 will cover, and bauxite retching spew over 𝐿𝐵𝐘𝐿 Gary near. I weep, but I despise my own hypocrisy. Can he cry thief who hopes to share the spoils? For I, a seeker too of wealth's depravity, will be there when they rape that lovely isle.
Okay, thank you, Michelle, for the incredible video and the really, really powerful images and words. I guess if we were live, there would be a big applause. We can just maybe do it with our reactions. We will comment on all this later, and now I'll have to let our speaker from Guinea go next, because he has very tight time. Obviously, there's time difference, and is a really busy man. So just to introduce him quickly, Souare Siddiqui is a young researcher. He is a young professional environmental manager and researcher in the area of environmental management and extractive activities impacts. He holds 2 master degrees, one in environmental management and one in extractive activities management. We will share in the chat some links to papers he's written and a book that he has authored. Without delay, I'll pass it on to you, Souare.
Yeah, how do I say good evening, good afternoon, depending on the time zone. I hope you are doing well. I won't stay so long as I say, and I apologize for that because I do have classes now. Bauxite mining in Guinea, we are, let me put it in this way, we are having the same experience like you do, because, you know, when they do what we call blasting mining, after all those processes, there are some things that you call concassation till they have the mineral and they combine mineral, and after that they have to, because it's the northern part of Guinea where we call bouquet. So they have to take the raw material from there to come to the Conakry port. And from the port, the bauxite is transported over there. But also we are having the environmental, a lot of environmental issues here from bouquet mining site to Conakry. And for the last, let me say 6 years, because my first master degree, I started working on this issue, and the second one also, like you saw on the publication. So to be short, I would like to say that we have to combine energy together, and because I'm sure of something that governments and the private company won't stop this activity. But the much thing that we have to do is like we have to come together and start fighting for our community, our local community. So I think from my end, that is the only solution that we have. But to say to stop this activity, it may be difficult, because when you see the structure of the activity, many industries are behind this issue. So in one word, I would like to say that I really appreciate when I see the email from team that we have to talk about this issue. And I do have a lot of things, maybe next time if we were organized and we say the time and everything, I can share. I do have some graphs and other things that I can share with you. And yeah, from there we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Soiree, and thank you so much for making the time for being here. Obviously, ideally would have been a longer conversation, and we're very sorry that you can't stay at the end for the question and answers, but we'll share the links of your articles and of your work, and people will be able to check it out. Just a reminder that most of the bauxite, which is processed in the Aughinish refinery, comes from Guinea, where Roussel, the owner of the company, also has shares. So it's a whole line of exploitation and of extractivism that affects many places. Okay, so I'll let our next speaker go, and this is Pat 𝐾𝐮𝐥𝐢𝐜 from the front lines of the campaign for many decades. He's a farmer and now an environmental campaigner. They set up the local Kappa Farmers Support Group in 2000 to fight for justice for the farmers in the area whose livelihood were destroyed by the factory, and also for the protection of human health from the emissions of the plant. Some years later, they formed the Irish Environmental Forum that support groups all over the country that are affected.
In 1983, the waste was put into the pond, but there was no lining on the bottom of the pond, which meant they were in breach of a planning condition, because it was supposed to be sealed from day one so that there'd be no seepage into the estuary. From 1983 until now, this toxic waste has been seeping into the estuary, and Limerick County Council have failed to even open an enforcement file on this company for such a breach. Now, the other problem is that it's increasing in height, the mud pond. The higher it goes, the more it's open to the wind, and the wind is taking this toxic waste onto farmlands. Now, you'll see the picture there up at the moment. Now, that waste blows onto farms, it blows in onto Askeaton farms, it blows further afield, and it even is found up in Mayo, Donegal, and other counties. Now, this is how serious this is, that the toxic waste can leave an open pond like this, and no one is held accountable for their actions. Now, what we have now at the moment is there was planning put in 2017, and that was one of the most dangerous planning applications that we've ever seen. It was for rock blasting. And as you see there, there's little sign there, an arrow showing where this rock blasting is. That rock blasting is right next to the plant itself. It's also just meters from the embankment walls. Now, if that blasting goes wrong or anything happens, it will take out the embankment walls. That means that the red toxic waste will flow into the channel. Now, how in the name of God this thing could be allowed to happen, that blasting would be allowed? The reason given was that they needed rock, stone to build up the sidewalls of where this red mud is stored. They can get this stone right across the road in a quarry, which means that they transport it by lorry and there is no other problem. But to go rock blasting means that they're putting the whole 50 million tons of toxic waste at risk here. They're putting the whole Shannon estuary for decades to come. In 2010, we saw what happened out in Hungary when the embankment walls broke regarding a refinery. And this is such a reckless application at the time. No one thought it was going to succeed, but of course it did, because Limerick County Council allowed it to go ahead for Aughinish Alumina. Not alone that, we appealed it to An Bord Pleanála, who again supported Aughinish and Limerick County Council. And then finally to the EPA, which are absolutely a waste of time. They will facilitate Aughinish whatever they need, even though that they are going to destroy the environment. So like, we have an environmental disaster down in 𝐾𝐮𝐥𝐢𝐜 for years. People out there need to see this photograph. They need to know what's out there and this toxic waste. Like, the cleanup costs at the end of the day will run into billions, because this company will walk away. The Irish taxpayer will be left to foot the bill. Now, also, you're looking at another waste byproduct, which is salt cake. Now, that salt cake is stored on the red mud. That means that this salt cake is very hazardous. It's cancerous, and this will also blow in the wind because it doesn't get covered. It doesn't. The cells that are storing this are left open to the wind, and it's taken all around the country also. So, like, this is an environmental disaster, a disaster that has happened years ago. We're fighting it 20 years. We saw it, what was going to happen, and they intend to destroy the whole of the estuary. They don't care about it. Our politicians don't care about it. It's to facilitate this company whatever they need. And we are paying a high price for it. The farmers in the area are paying a high price for it. And let me tell you, the human health have a high price already paid. We have cancer in the area. We have huge respiratory problems in the area. Kids are having serious health issues, and still no one gives a damn as to what's happening to these people. We have been fighting, but today is another day. With the help of Clare and other counties, we're hoping that this can be taken on. But let me tell you, we are gone beyond return when it comes to an environmental disaster. It has happened, it's on its way, and it will be impossible to stop it.
Thank you, Pash. And thank you for being so synthetic, but yeah, at the same time, for giving us a very, very clear picture of all this entails and the gravity of the situation, which goes so kind of unnoticed and disregarded. So yeah, I'm sure people will have loads of questions. We'll keep them for the end. And we're going to go ahead now with 𝐾𝐮 𝐅𝐸, who is an eco-socialist, former councillor of Limerick, turned podcaster, producer of Rupture Radio podcast, and a member of People Before Profit in Limerick. So I'll pass it on to you, 𝐾𝐮.
Thanks a million, and thanks for organising this event, and thanks to everybody that's like taking time out of their Monday evening to come and to learn about this and to discuss what we can do about it. And in particular, fair play to Pat, not just for like his talk there, but for what has been over 40 years next year of fighting on this, a tireless campaigner, on this, and I've met Pat years and years ago when I was on the council in Limerick. He really has done tremendous work over the years in beating a drum about this and bringing it to everybody's attention. And I would just say there's no Limerick politician that has an excuse for not knowing about this. I'm not saying that there aren't politicians in Limerick that don't know about it, but there's no politician that has the excuse of never having had Pat approach them and try to tell them about it. They are willfully ignorant if they haven't paid attention to this. So what I'm going to try to talk about, well, just to say a couple of things. So, and also just to empathise also with Pat. He didn't go through it all there, but if you read up on him and his family's story, the trauma that they've been dragged through on this is horrific. And also then to say fair play to Michelle for the video. Yeah, and I think that is very welcome. Now, my points are going to be a little bit all over the place, but hopefully it all knits together well. So, the other thing that I want to say is about the video is, like, I think if anybody, like, even just from a non-scientific background, just the video footage demonstrating the complete dearth, the complete lack of wildlife in the area, and that contrast should be setting alarm bells. You don't need to be an expert to know that there is something deeply wrong there. And I would like to express my support and People for Profit's ongoing support and endorsing those calls for proper investigation into this, and offering anything we can do as a branch. So we have a new branch of People for Profit in Limerick, but anything we can do to try to support and to echo and to bring it to the attention, or anything that our TDs in the Dáil can do to try to put down questions or bring it to light, anything, to offer that support. And also to, if there is a need for people to engage in any direct action campaigning, feel free to give us a call. That's what we do best. So yeah, one of the points that I want to do is to try to position this in a bigger picture context, because I think Aughinish is one part of what is quickly becoming a Midwest that is the Irish capital of pollution. You have Aughinish there since '83. You have Moneypoint. You have you had the attempt by CEP to build a gasification plant in Gortnadrumma, which was defeated by community opposition. Originally, every single councillor, bar 3, supported it, but because of community opposition, they were turned around. And you have people will hopefully be aware of as well, the Irish Cement's plans to burn tyres in their cement factory in the city. And then also in the Midwest, you have the LNG plans and massive data center plans as well. So I think there is an agenda pushing the Midwest towards being Ireland's capital of pollution. And it's part of an industrial policy, which I'll come on to, in Ireland, which has been one of light touch self-regulation when it comes to the environment. And I think that, like, we have known human activity is destroying our environment. In the 200 years since capitalism has come to dominate our planet, the air has been filled with countless pollutants in the drive for profit, as well as causing dramatic changes in our climate. These chemicals have had a devastating impact on our health. And with the UN estimating 681 people die from air pollution in Ireland in 1 year. And what we've seen, I think, over the last number of years is huge numbers of ordinary people have become more environmentally conscious in their daily lives, and have changed their way of living. But the policy of the state has not caught up, and that policy of light touch self-regulation, and when it comes to big business polluters, continues. And yeah, so we see that obviously with chief amongst the polluters in the Midwest is Aughinish, which Greenpeace, sorry, before I go on to that, that policy of like light touch regulation. It's funny, going back like the year that I was born, Greenpeace was already condemning this light touch regulation approach of Ireland. So in 1989, Greenpeace described Ireland's approach to these polluters as like economic naivety, saying that Irish law tends to be non-specific in effluent matters and pollution matters, reflecting the unadvanced state of the economy. And it's not just the unadvanced state, it was a political choice to not to be light touch in order to try to attract businesses. And the Irish government continues that approach today. Only recently they were fighting with the US government on behalf of Russell and on behalf of the man 𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿, the former owner. I think he's had to sell his majority shareholding in the company. A Russian oligarch that used to own Aughinish, and the Irish government, when the US was bringing were clamping down on some of these oligarchs, the Irish government was off batting for them and batting for Oleg and Russell to try to get those sanctions lifted. So it just shows the political power that these companies still have, and that same approach of polishing the boots of big business applies today. And in terms of the point of Aughinish being one of the biggest polluters, obviously there's the red mud, which is a massive issue, but there's even just in terms of CO2 emissions. Aughinish is one of the single biggest producers of CO2 in the country, biggest users of energy in the country. In 2017, their energy consumption was 40 megawatts, and with that comes a massive environmental footprint comes a massive lobbying operation to try to protect themselves. So in 2018, it was discovered, or Russell were found guilty of lobbying. Sorry, not found guilty. Were found to be lobbying the Irish state to try to exclude themselves from energy levies that would see the company lose out on 13.7 million per year. So they were openly lobbying to try to protect themselves from having to foot the bill for their environmental impact. But it's not just environmentally that we see this sort of light touch approach, or this falling in line with whatever big business say. Even in terms of tax income and subsidies, in between 2007 and 2011, the company paid a total of 1,009. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a phone call coming. That's very awkward. 1,952 euro. That's the tax they paid on 191 million euro worth of revenue. So they have been given a not just light touch in terms of environmental regulation, but sweetheart deals in terms of taxes as well as being found. Alongside energy subsidies, Aughinish was also found to be in receipt of generous tax breaks with the Irish state was ordered to get back 10 million in tax that they gave in a sweetheart deal to the company, which was deemed to have violated EU law, and the government lost their appeal on that as well. So you can see the scale of what we're dealing with here is big businesses that, for their own profit maximization, don't care about the impact that they have on the environment, and the government and the state and state institutions that bow down before them. And I think it is part of, we've all heard the notion of a tax haven. Ireland is a tax haven, but Ireland has also carved out a position as a pollution haven in Ireland, attracting businesses here on the basis of light touch regulation of the environment and self-regulation. We previously had the previous head of the EPA. One of the first things she said on becoming head of the EPA was that she was not going to be racing to prosecute big business polluters. And that the EPA would adopt a pro-business approach to regulation. So the Environmental Protection Agency very much when it was set up, given an exclusion, protection from being prosecuted itself. That it was very much set up, really, in my opinion, to give a greenwashing of what was taking place, and as a light touch self-regulation model. And I think the lesson for us, for all of these campaigns, for Pat's campaign, for the fight against Aughinish, but also for the fight about for the campaigns on the Limerick Against Pollution campaign, on Irish Cement's plans to burn tyres, for the fight against data centres, and for LNG. The lesson that we have to take is there's no white knight out there that's going to come to our defence and protect us from the environment. You can't rely on the councils, planning officials, the EPA, the Ombudsman, the EPA. They are not going to solve this, because this isn't just that they don't know. This is a policy from the government, and instead, what we need, in my opinion, is people power campaigns. We need to be building people power from below, direct actions. Direct actions such as the XR have done, such as the Rossport 5 did. That's the kind of, and such as we saw in against the North Dakota oil pipeline. That's the kind of civil disobedience approach that I think we need. But I also think we need to link those movements together for political change. We've had 100 years of governments that have served the rich, 100 years of governments that have adopted pro-business policies, and we need, and therefore the end result is that we've had environmental policies that serve the rich and not ordinary people. And if we need to be also fighting, in my opinion, for a left government which would take eco-socialist policies, that would take on the big business polluters, that would tackle these big business polluters rather than taxing ordinary people with extra carbon taxes, but would take on some of those big business polluters. Yeah, so I think that's the final point that I was going to say, is fair play to everybody for attending this, fair play to Pat and everybody that's doing work to try to highlight this. And if there's a lesson in all of it, it's that there is no white light or white knight coming to save us. We are the white knights. We need to build people power movements ourselves, and we need to fight on all of these movements. We also need to link them together to try to achieve radical change. I think the root cause of this problem is capitalism emphasizing profit over people, and what we need to be fighting for is a society where people come before profit.
Thank you so much, 𝐾𝐮. Thank you for your really important words, and for speaking truth to power. It's always very important to have the political economy perspective, because these things don't happen in a void. Like, there's kind of the workings of corporate power and, the ties with the political system that are at play here. And thank you also for the inspiring solutions you've proposed. Just to bring to the attention of everybody that we put in the chat a link to Soire's works, and also a link to a publication that Michelle, the author of the documentary we showed at the start, has very kindly shared with us. And it's about her experiences growing up next to this 𝐾𝐮 facility. So we're very honored now to have our next speaker. 𝐿 Owens is CEO of EcoJustice Ireland, which is an organization that specializes in environmental law, trade union law, and human rights. Before that, he worked for the International Center for Trade Union Rights, the legal department of the International Trade Union Confederation, and the Bureau for Workers' Activities of the International Labour Organization. He is chair of the Haldane Society of Socialist Lawyers in the UK, and believes that articulating the need for system change for eco-justice is important, and it can be best achieved by collective action by workers and local communities. He's also the Irish representative for the UN's Harmony with Nature Agency. We're very happy to have you here, 𝐿. The word to you.
Thanks, Emanuela, and thanks everyone for the invitation. And I was feeling quite emotional just looking at the video and hearing the testimony of Pat. It's still shocking whenever these things occur, and have been occurring over time, to have the acute presentation of it, which I haven't been across the detail of it, but when it was brought to my attention, I wanted to show whatever solidarity I could, and bring some of my insight and experience to the discussion. So with that in mind, I would agree with basically everything that 𝐾𝐮 has said. So being the chair of a Society of Socialist Lawyers, I'm a socialist first, and the lawyer part is very much second. It's been my experience as a lawyer that trade unions and communities are the agents of change within society, and they produce what's needed for society, whether it's accepted in the particular time or at a later stage whenever people come to their senses. And I think that my background with trade unions really gives a sense for me of the campaigning power and the way in which a dedicated campaign and support and solidarity can achieve things that one wouldn't have thought possible. So by way of example, I represented the chair of the Blacklist Support Group, and what that entailed was since 1919, the trade union movement in Britain and Ireland were being spied upon by construction companies but also companies in other sectors. And the blacklist support group contained members who were prevented from working or sacked for their trade union activities on health and safety matters, including in industrial settings where they were exposed as workers, where communities were exposed. And one of the ways in which that came to light was investigative journalism, and it was discovered that 40 multinational construction companies were paying subscriptions to a spying agency to prevent these guys from working. So we took a case on their behalf. But the best part of it was using the case as publicity and building up a campaign. And as Cian alluded to, direct action was taken and did work in the way in which they formed their strategy, and the legal strategy was very much subsidiary to the direct action. And of course, that influences the way I view the law, which is illegitimate in its manifestation because it's a reflection of political power. So I sort of operate at the margins of the legal system in Britain and Ireland and the European Union, but with the knowledge of how to try and take advantage of it. That said, as a trade unionist, I'm conscious of the need for a just transition and the issue in relation to those that work at the plant. And I think that the industrial policy of the state needs to take into account how those workers are impacted, and as well, of course, farmers in the local area. But the problem is big business and capital, as Cian referred to. I think that the corporate capture of the main parties within the Irish state has, been to such an extent where, they have to do the companies dirty work for them in appealing EU tax decisions, which, beggars belief. But ultimately, I think that pending the development of a left government, it's really up to citizens, it's up to individuals, but more fundamentally to those that are in campaigns and are in trade unions. Now, of course, there's a sense of protectionism with some trade unions in the way in which they view their jobs being a threat, with the need for a change in industrial policy and in particular sectors. But my experience being part of the campaign against climate change trade union group is that there are plenty of trade unionists that get the issue and want to advocate for change for the benefit of communities and workers and those that commute to workplaces where they're subject to pollution, but also communities that are in those very workplaces that suffer as well. So I think there is more of a sense of the way in which we can operate as a society. And Emanuela alluded to my involvement in the rights of nature movement. And essentially, I guess some of you have a sense of what that may mean, but just in summary, it would give, say, the 𝐾𝐮𝐿 the right to sue Alumina. So that would be on the basis that the river has legal personhood and legal rights. And if you can imagine that any company is a legal fiction, a reflection of capitalist judicial decisions in the 19th century, and they are not inevitable, they are not the way in which we as a society need to operate. So we can and should provide legal personhood to nature. And, people will say, well, that's utopian, that's idealistic, but they said that about human rights as well. They said that about slavery at a certain time, about the way in which women didn't have the vote. So I think that the evolution of human rights within the 20th century can and should be reflected in the growing rights of nature movement. It has happened in other jurisdictions, including in New Zealand, where a river did get legal personhood. Now that had specific circumstances in relation to a treaty negotiation between the Maori people and the New Zealand government, but the principle is established both there and around the world. So, you know, it's a question of raising the issues, pushing hard on the idealistic points, but, you know, conscious of the material realities that people in Clare face. And, you know, I'm very conscious of that, particularly as I live in County Down beside the Mourne Mountains, and it's a small village called Dundrum in County Down. And there's just across the bay, there's the occupying forces of the British Army have a camp on a nature reserve on one side of the bay. On the other side, there's an actual nature reserve, which you know, is facilitated. So there's a sort of way in which people are not really thinking through the nature of the issues that are at play. I don't think it's sufficient for people to engage in a sort of sustainability mindset where that sort of overlaps with greenwashing and a business as usual mentality. I don't want to go back to a situation after COVID where we're going back to normal. I want a situation where we're articulating the way in which we as a society wish to move. And Ireland, being an island, has a particular responsibility to show leadership for islands around the world, and EcoJustice Ireland are part of a network called the Island Innovation Network, which we show solidarity with low-lying countries and islands throughout the world. And I think, you know, the way in which this situation has evolved, you know, people with that connection to the land, like Pat, they knew, whether it was instinctively or, you know, they had a sense of the facts on the ground and could see the way the future was going to be impacted for them, for their families, for their communities, and, you know, for food sovereignty as well. It's going to be an ongoing issue. So I think that the way forward is to sort of look at past successes, the way in which the Hillsborough families secured justice after the Hillsborough disaster. The Bloody Sunday families campaigned for a long time as well. The 50th anniversary occurred recently. But this is the issue of our time. Every one of us has a responsibility to engage for ourselves, for our families, future generations. So I think all the work that's been done by Future Proof Clare is so great, and I've been very impressed. And you know, I know Teresa is going to speak, and she does amazing work as well that I'm aware of. So I just think that the struggle goes on, and we need to keep focused on the ultimate goal, and ultimately there will be a change in society. I'm fully confident of that. The place-based nature of the way in which we need to change as a society reflects a lot of the thinking around the world. You know, the way I like to look at these issues is, you know, on a four level mindset, where you have your local, regional, national, international approaches, but the place-based element of that, the local, is where people can make the most difference, where they're in tune with the land, where they're in tune with the needs of their own community. And the Irish government needs to get out of the grips of big business and, yeah, in my view, elect people before profit. But that said, you know, I'm not party political, because I've just returned from Britain after 17 years away and had, you know, various experiences there and in continental Europe, which have informed my views. But, you know, I'm glad to be back in Ireland and to be with such courageous comrades. And again, thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Declan, for your very inspiring words, and yeah, for all the suggestions you made about different strategies that can complement each other, and the role of law, which it's often a barrier, for people to claim justice, rather than a way for for people to access justice because of the costs, for example. But it can also be strategically used, as you showed, in favor if it's done intelligently and in conjunction with other tactics. And also thanks for introducing the issue of the workers, which is very, very important, because usually the argument that it's brought forward by politicians is that we need investment, we need this sort of projects in order to create jobs. But then there's no discussion about which type of jobs and their security and the quality of life of the workers. So just recently, Sean Kelly talked on Radio Kerry about the necessity to let this development, this extension of Aughinish to go ahead because of the jobs that are dependent on it. And it's really hard to counteract that. And thank you also for introducing the important concept of the rights of nature, which is a revolutionary concept. And it's really kind of getting more and more grip. Even just here in Ireland, there are a few councils that have recently passed motions about the rights of nature. So it's a small step, but it's something. It's definitely something is shifting. So yeah, I'd like to open now the floor to question and answers. One way to do it would be to just raise your hand electronically. So in the reaction tabs, you can find the hand. If it's not too many people, just unmute yourself and speak. If not, I'll call you out as I see the hands up. So yeah, I can't see anybody yet. Teresa, you were mentioned a couple of times. Would you like to make a comment on this, just to break the ice?
Break the ice with the hatchet. No, just to say thank you so much to all the speakers. It's been really, really good. And I completely agree. Years of campaigning, I see it's always comes back to money. All of the issues we face comes back to money and profit, and somebody getting money out of it, and someone getting more money from them or whatever. But our environment is so badly degraded and getting so much worse that we really, really need to work together. We really need to get more people on board. We still have to fight all the different fires that we're all fighting, but they're all heading for the same, engulfing the whole place. So while we have to fight fires all over the place, we have to collaborate, and we really need to work together and change the whole system that's happening. And I'm delighted to see you all here tonight. So I'll shut it up now. Thanks, Declan.
Thank you, Teresa. I think Emily and Irene had a question, but they put their hands down. Do you still want to speak?
Well, my recollection years ago when Greenpeace were present in Ireland, that they exposed that the aluminium company had a waste byproduct of mercury, and that they had a legal license to dump 5 million tons of mercury into the Shannon annually, unmonitored. Is that really true? Because I've been talking and thinking about it for years, and just, there's no mention of it tonight. Does anyone know about that? Like this highly toxic heavy metal.
No, I think there's an agreement. There was an agreement with the Shannon Fishery Board, is that Aughinish could pollute the Shannon up to 10%. Now, what was 10%? Was that 10% of 10 million tons or 1 million tons? We found out about that agreement, and the EPA had to get a squash straight away. So that is one of the dumping agreements that was found out about. So like the fishery boards were allowing that, which was an absolute disgrace. So Now, the other thing was that when the first pond was constructed, there was 150 acres of it never lined. So the EPA in 1998 gave an IPC license to Aughinish, which meant that they were guaranteed that they could pollute through this 150 acres that was unlined into the Shannon estuary. And it's the talk of the skies when flights come into Shannon, because when people look down on a fine day, they can see all this red underneath the water next to the mud pond, which shows that it's really working for them, that the unlined section, which is a lot of acres, is allowed to go ahead to this present day. Now, when they were building the second pond, we had pushed the agenda on that they should first line the second pond, take the waste from the first pond, put it into the second pond, and then seal the first pond, and then refill it. But of course, that was going to cost money, and that would definitely not be. They would definitely not upset Aughinish for such costs. But they are the sections that the polluting goes on. The council also allows polluting to go on through certain sections of the plant. So that's about it. Now, the red mud and all contains mercury, it contains lead, it contains uranium, and so look, they just don't do any tests. That's why they set up near the Shannon, because they're able to dump out there quietly. The other thing as well is when the ships comes in, what's left over on the jetty is just pushed in with a bobcat. So the bauxite, when it comes in, what's left over from that is just pushed in when the ship goes out. The alumina, when it goes being loaded, that what's left over is pushed down there, and the dredging takes place, and that means that the dredging pulls all this toxic waste out into the Shannon estuary, and it heads off for Ballybun and Ballylongford and everything. And when we pushed the EP on it, they could find none of this toxic waste down below the jetty, because they just wouldn't send down a diver to make sure they wouldn't find it. So this is what's going on down there, like, and that's what they've been getting away with.
Thanks, Pash. Yeah, it's very hard to prove the contamination in the area, and even the classification of the red mud, which is considered toxic by all effects because of its high alkalinity. It's classified as non-hazardous, so which is kind of baffling considering, you know, the kind of high environmental impact that it has. So is there any other comments on that? Okay. So I think I see there Anne McNamara has her hand up.
Yeah, Emanuela, this is Pauline McHenry here. It's the wrong name that's on the Zoom. I didn't have time to get it off. I just have I was listening to the Declan, who with a legal background, because as you know, I have a legal background myself, but I'm totally disillusioned as to the use of the law in this whole arena, because this thing is going on island-wide now. It's been going on globally for quite a long time. And these people just drive a coach and horse through the law. And it's not just in relation to Aughinish, it's across the board. And I've seen it in relation to several different issues, north and south of the border. My thing is that the different issues that are arising in different areas, people are connecting with their own issue, and they're dealing with it in isolation. And it's very difficult to get them to connect or join all the dots and actually see this comes from one source, because that's what I see. If you take, for example, the MICA campaign in Donegal, Mayo, and, you know, elsewhere throughout the island, that is connected into the same circle that is behind all of this. You know, it is all the one. And individually and separately, to date, we have not managed to stop it or defeat it. It's like an invasion, and it's just rolling straight over us and through us. And from what I see of the law, it is it's unable to do anything about it. The laws are simply being ignored. You take them to court on judicial review, you simply teach them how to follow the procedures correctly, and they go back in again. The rights of nature in theory is a good thing, but as I said in the chat there, rights of nature, human rights, it's all the one. And if you could just have the one law covering everyone and everything that was flipping well enforceable by the ordinary people, quickly and easily. That is what is needed. You won't get it. I can't see you getting it. This is too big a power over us. And I think the only solution is for all of those individual campaigns to join the dots and come together and see the commonality in all of the campaigns. That's all I've got to say for the moment. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Pauline. Teresa, would you like to comment on that?
I was just doing an applause because
sorry.
Well, the other thing I find, having moved from the city, is the lack of awareness of all of this sort of stuff going on around the country. And so many of the decisions are made in Dublin, and a lot of people in Dublin hear people in the country saying, you know, this is contaminating this. It's not until you're actually living here and living amongst it that you really appreciate the gravity of the situation. I think, and visualizing it is part of that. And I think a lot of campaigning needs to be a lot about pictures of what exactly it means and what exactly is going on. And that's what I'm seeing coming out of this. You know, I'd love to see what it's like in Guinea and things like that, so that we can appreciate how dangerous it is for people. And that might help with campaigns. That's all I got. Sorry.
That's good, thank you. Yeah, and I think that comes up a lot as well, the frustration towards the legal system, which is not really working for the people, but mostly just to protect corporate interests, and the need for people to connect with that comes up a lot. And really there, you know, people need to kind of get more organized. Mary Kate?
I think Robert might have had his hand up there.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you, Robert. Or did you want to answer to comment on that, Declan? Were you going to comment on?
Yeah, I was going to reply to Pauline initially, but I can do it afterwards if you want to take the other points.
Okay, so Robert, would you like to go ahead? Muted.
There is a rise, certainly in our community down here in West Clare, Loophead, in the community, especially since the pandemic. It's spreading, and I agree with the last speaker, it would be nice if we could connect. The big issue I see with Aughinish is it's an historically placed, it wouldn't get through the planning procedures at the present. It wouldn't have a chance with the way the people are reacting to stuff at the moment. There is a lot of good anti-environment or pro-environment stuff happening throughout the state. And Aughinish is one of the big areas where we all need to get together. I grew up in Limerick. It's disgraceful what's happening there with this burning of towers. And yet it's going ahead. What I wanted to come here tonight to hear we're going to withdraw our rates. I came here tonight to hear we're going to have a march in Limerick. I came here tonight to hear I'm going to keep not paying my taxes. until something is done. A lot of talk here tonight, a lot of left-wing talk. I have no problem with it. I have no issue with it. But it's time that the ordinary people were drawn into it, and we need leadership coming out of the communities, not necessarily coming out of political parties. What's happening on the ground in Aughinish area that I could support? What's happening nationally for Aughinish, Limerick and other areas with withdrawing stuff from the state that I can support? Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Will we go back to Pauline's question? Declan, would you like to comment on it?
Yeah, I think I try to convey that I don't respect the law, that I don't believe the law has ever been sufficient, and that I think that direct action and collective action by trade unions can achieve more than the law ever can or ever will do, until such times as we have a constitution which reflects the concerns of ordinary people and, as Colleen said, enforce it. And you can't enforce it whenever you have politicians from Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael in particular. You know, we shouldn't keep electing those politicians for a start. And although I appreciate Robert's point about not being party politics or being left politics, I'm not party political, but I very much think that you're right. You can and should withdraw your taxes in relation to the failures of the state to protect your interests, to protect your lives. You know, air pollution is one of the biggest causes of mortality within Britain and Ireland. It is the case that one can make a principled stand on these issues. It's been done before, and people can do it again. And it is a question of organising, a question of political will, sometimes sacrifices. But, you know, in terms of left-wing talk is the nature of this forum in terms of expressing the things that need to be done. And then it is a case that people have to go out and do them, but they have to sort of organise and, you know, yes, challenge the ideas that are put forward from a left-wing perspective. But I think the reality is that nobody in Ireland should be voting for Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. You know, I just can't see any logic in voting for either of those two parties. Now, there's problems with other parties as well, but the law as it's implemented is a reflection of their negligence, it's a reflection of their corporate capture, and it's a reflection of the broader structural problems of a capitalist system. You know, as exemplified by big tech, the way in which data centers are going to use up part of our utility in terms of generation of electricity. And, you know, I think what I was trying to emphasize is that it's exactly the local, it's exactly the way in which Robert is alluding to people taking action into their own hands. Now, joining up the dots is being done, but, you know, I would have to say there's a sort of liberal left perspective on this, as Theresa alluded to. You know, people in Dublin or in Belfast are sort of, you know, more conceptualizing the issue without getting on the ground and dealing with communities and dealing with workers. And that's the nature of the trade union movement. You know, it's rooted in working class concern with people. And that's why I'm trying to bring together and join the dots, if you like, the way in which communities and workers can work together to effectuate the change that's needed. And it can be done. It's been done before, and it'll be done again. You know, you only have to look at Irish history to understand that people can and do make change. Nothing is inevitable. And I don't want to sort of go on in a rhetorical flourish, because I understand, you know, the disappointments in the way in which things haven't been successful in campaigning to date. And I can understand where pessimism comes in. But my role, I think, is to push and push and take an optimistic view. And that's the only way that I can operate within this global capitalist system, within the capitalist system within this country. But you know, we have to take the long view. Exactly what Pat's doing. He's taking the long view. He took the long view back whenever it wasn't fashionable, and we have responsibility again to take the long view and to be optimistic and to take action where we consider it necessary and plausible for ourselves and our families.
Thank you, Declan. Mary-Kate.
Hi, yeah. So I'm Mary-Kate from Dolphin Watch in 𝐾𝐮𝐥𝐬, and I'm kind of new to this conversation, kind of semi-new to the area. So I just wanted to, I suppose, add a point in on their behalf. You know, the dolphins are such a huge part of Shannon Estuary. They're part of the special area of conservation, and they're a huge draw for the area from a tourism perspective as well. And with nature tourism being one of the fastest growing industries at the moment in the world, it's just, you know, we have the responsibility to look after them for both from a moral standpoint and from an economical one. And just, I suppose, a further point on the connection side of things, I suppose as a more optimistic view, I definitely have noticed as a marine guide over the last number of years, from when I started, the questions were usually, oh, can we touch and cuddle the dolphins? And now more and more people are asking, how can we help the dolphins? What are the problems? How can we help them? And it is, I suppose, a positive thing to see these changes in the general public, but it's great to see these conversations happening. And just thanks to the speakers and everything for tonight. It was good to get all the information so I can pass it along on the trips now.
Can I come in on that there, please?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the dolphins, we were concerned about them as well. And we put it in our objection, like there's going to be blasting. It's going to take place 5 to 6 times over 5 months every year for 10 years for this blasting down in Aughinish. So definitely there's going to be a problem for the dolphins. And we were surprised that there wasn't more made of it, you know, because that they'd be protected. Like the dolphins are going to be coming very close, you know, to where this blasting is. And Aughinish will not care when they do the blasting. They're not going to be ringing the dolphins and saying, let's move out. Like they're going to just blast, and, you know, the ecolife is going to be affected. And there's SSCs are going to be affected and everything, because when they start this blasting, the we complained about that when the first blast goes off, the EP are going to look for a report. Like, it may not be the first blast, or it may not be the third. It could be the 50th blast that'll take out, you know, damaged walls from the red mud. We were looking for, after every blast, that there would be you know, is there stress test going to be done on the walls that's holding in the red mud? And, you know, our house is going to be looked at, you know, is damage to the ecosystem, you know, is the dolphins going to be taken into consideration? Has any damage happened to them after any blast? And what we've been told is that the first blast will be the only blast that will be looked at. And, you know, by the time a report will come from the first blast, you can be sure there'll be 10 blasts done in the meantime, because that's the way they work. You know, they won't just do a report on the first one and say, let's hold off until we look at the report and we look into everything. They're not going to look into everything, you know, and this is why we maintain that this is going to be serious for everyone. And I think that the blasting that got to go ahead in 2017 and now the extra blasting to take out more of the borough pit, like is just going to be the death nail of the Shannon Estuary and everything before it. So that's something that needs to be highlighted, and we're real concerned for the dolphins, because everyone is on their own and everyone seems to be cut loose here. You know,
if I could just add on to that, just even the sound, the noise pollution alone is for the dolphins. Like I did my undergraduate thesis on dolphin sounds, and even a small motorboat can reduce a dolphin's communication range by 50%. So the likes of blasting, not only will it cause stress, but it reduces communication. It causes huge problems from their social side of things as well. You know, it disturbs them in every aspect of their lives.
Yeah, I think that will be one of the worst, like the vibrations through that water, like, you know, that's going to affect all before it, is going to be serious. Now, the other thing is in this latest planning or just going through on board Panola, the local councillors have put in a thing there that there should be a fund set up. You know, this fund is for locals, and all this fund is to make sure that people's you know, they'll apply for it. Groups will apply for it, and the groups will be staying quiet once they get funding. And I think this is one of the things that should have been cancelled, that there should be no money, no group or anyone take money for such a thing that's going to have such devastation. And this is just another way of the council getting Aughinish in control of the local situation. And it's a big price to pay for anyone to take any money in with what's coming ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. It's the typical corporate social responsibility tactic that big corporations use anywhere, just dishing out money to local GA clubs and local groups to keep everybody silent. So we're going to try to stay on time. So we're hoping to finish around 9. We still have 3 people who have their hands raised. So we'll listen what they have to say, and then we'll try to wrap it up. So I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, I think Theresa was the first one, then Melina, and then Bernadette.
I really just want to come in and say that, you know, this is hopefully the start of a campaign. I think, Robert, you were asking about it as regards left and right. You know, I hate all politics, to be honest with you, but any politics that I've ever got that supports what we're actually doing always tends to be on the left. And I would love if it was mainstream, which it should be, and it should be becoming more and more. I put my mobile number in the chat, and if people are willing to get involved, we're also looking at the status of the Shannon and whether we should do something combined with all groups along the Shannon that care about the Shannon, collaborating on a bigger picture. Will you please email or send me a text maybe on that number, or email back, or future-proof Claire or something, but say that you want to get involved, and at some level you could just share things on social media or do something small. It would be great to have more people joined up and communicating on it. That's all really. Just don't walk away without signing up to something if you really feel passionate about it. Thanks.
Thanks, Theresa. Melina, I think you were next.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Teresa is saying basically, and what you said at the beginning. I've put the future-proof Claire Gmail address in the chat so people can contact us, and please do, because like any legal help that we can get is much appreciated, or just ideas about campaigns. And just I wanted to add to what Emanuela said about the beginning and joining the dots. We're also fighting fracking in Northern Ireland at the moment because the contamination will come down the River Shannon, you know, down to the estuary. And we're trying to make it visible to people in Belfast, because Lough Neagh is also under threat from fracking, and 40% of the water for Belfast City comes from Lough Neagh. And we're trying to make the people in Dublin aware of this fracking, because there's a planned pipeline from Bird Hill, roughly, in the River Shannon, to bring water to Dublin City, right? So they would also be affected by this contaminated water. And, you know, we need a huge body of people to help us, because we can't do it on our own anymore. Like every day, basically, there's a new struggle starting. So yeah, any help that we can get is much appreciated.
Thanks, Melina. Yeah, for connecting the dots. There's huge overlaps between all these campaigns, and really we need to work on all these together. Bernadette.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for giving me a bit of space to speak. I just wanted to let you know in regard to that, there is a network, it's called Communities Against the Injustice of Mining. And we're having a meeting in outside Carrickmacross next Saturday. Anybody that's interested, you know, contact us. Also, we are running a campaign against CETA. And I think it's really important to mention CETA because if CETA goes through, it's going to be very difficult to stop any of the companies, these mining companies that have made any investment, even if it's only prospecting in Ireland. So it's really important, I think, that everybody gets behind that and try and get it stopped. So that also that's been run by 𝐾𝐮, Communities Against the Injustice of Mining group. Running that. Yeah, and thanks a million. And thanks to Siddiqui for being here tonight and for his expertise and joining us, and all of you that organised this. Really appreciate it. I'm living in Donegal, so we have our problems up here as well. So it's good to see everybody getting together and talking about it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very good point. And
can I just go for one second?
Yeah, go on, Pat.
Yeah, can I make an appeal there to families over in Clare? We're well aware of the problems that Aughinish emissions are having on the population over in Clare, the cancer clusters that are showing up over there, young people being affected. And we believe that Aughinish had played a big part in damaging Clare, and we were hoping maybe like we have done in areas is for local people just to sit down and maybe take a map and start marking out cancers, who has cancer, who have died from cancer, and to see if clusters are there. I know that one journalist in particular in the Clare Champion has been brilliant over there. He has been trying to help families, and he appeals to people to come forward and maybe sit down with us, or we have no problem going over to Clare and just to show you what to look for, because definitely you've got a lot of the emissions over the years and the red dust going over to you, which is toxic, and we would like to help you out if we can, and that as I said, it's just local people on the ground that if you could just come together, get a map, and just you know, word them out just to see how bad these clusters are and if they're there, because definitely we all need to join the dots here.
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, it's very important. And so, yeah, we're going to wrap up here. Just before we leave, just going to say that the deadline for putting objections to the new application of Aughinish, the one that will extend the red mud deposit and through blasting rock, is in 3 days. It's the 10th of February. So Future Proof Clare is going to put in a submission, an objection to An Bord Pleanála, because it's strategic infrastructure. It goes directly to An Bord Pleanála. It bypasses the council. So if anybody would like to put an objection individually or as an organization, we can share the template. We have a simplified version that you can adjust for your own organization, and there's details on how to do it. So please, yeah, keep an eye on the Facebook page. We share the details on the chat. And yeah, and thank you everybody for being here. And we really hope that this gave more visibility to the issue, and that something is going to come out of that. So have a good evening, and thank you very much to the speakers and everybody for making the time. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks a million, Emanuela. Thanks, folks.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot, lads.
Thanks,
Brilliant.
Emanuela. Thanks.
Bye.